Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage and the Renault 25 V6 Turbo. This video is about something else electronical on the Renault that is not working right. I got a service light and I got a ABS light on the dash, but it's not always on. It's almost always on, but sometimes it shuts off and it's off for a while, and that gives me hope that there is actually not really something wrong with any components, but maybe it's just all the rings that needs to be cleaned up. There is a ring with a lot of tabs on all the way around that the sensors for the ABS system is reading on, and if they are very dirty, it will get a false reading and then it will make an error and disable itself. It could, of course, also be sensors. If so, it could be more involved, both to find the sensor that is wrong, it's not that bad, but getting them could be a problem on this. It's a pretty rare car. But firstly, I want you to see this suspension setup. This is actually the first time I show this suspension without the wheels on, I think. And take a look at this car. It's from '87, remember. This is not a modern car, not at all. But take a look at the discs. We got vented disc. It's also vented on the inside, so the heat is not transferred to the hub itself. There's a big brake caliper. It actually only have one piston, but other than that, it looks pretty complicated. And then we have the sway bar with a drop link, and we have this suspension setup that got some kind of adjustment there. I'm not really sure what that is, but it is a very complicated suspension setup on a car from '87, that's for sure. This looks very race car-like. The Renaults from this time is just quite impressive. But what I want to do in this video is to find the rings. You can see the ring down there. And make sure that they are clean all the way around on all four corners. And then hopefully that can switch off the error code. This one though looks just fine. On the back we also have a anti-roll bar with a drop link kind of construction. And that big spring in there. It is complicated suspension setup, and also brake discs on the rear, which is nice. It is a pretty powerful car after all. The ring in here looks all right also, but the sensor itself is actually pretty dirty. So I think I'm gonna start by cleaning this one. Actually, I'm gonna clean all of them, but I'm gonna begin with this one. I'm gonna use a bit of brake cleaner to try to loosen up the dirt, and then with a brush try to clean it. And I'm gonna give the ring some degreaser. And then using some compressed air, I'm gonna clean the rest of it up. There we go, it looks nice and clean down there now. And I'm gonna do that on all four corners. So I just cleaned the right front. Nothing looked wrong there and it wasn't very dirty, but this one though. Take a look at the ring on this one. See the marks? Something has been stuck between the ring and the sensor on this one. I'm gonna clean it up good. I'm gonna clean that up good, and hopefully it helps. But I do have the feeling that it could be this one that is giving me the troubles, and it could also maybe be hard to fix without a new sensor, because if the sensor is actually scratched to pieces, then yeah. But let's just see. As mentioned, it is working sometimes, so it could be. I could be lucky. So there we go, it looks clean. Let's hope that works. There we go. Next up I want to fire up the car to see if the light is still on, but I won't really know for sure before I start driving it, because I presume that it needs the impulses.
Normal voltage. Waiting for connection.
So the light is still on, and it could be normal. Maybe it needs to move a bit before it reconsiders. But yeah, let's just see. I mean, it might need to feel that everything is normal before it shuts the light off. It is a pretty modern ECU, so it might keep the error code for a while. I might even have to reset it, I don't know. But let's just try to drive for a bit, see if it switches off. Okay, I think it's safe to say that cleaning the rings didn't work. Okay, so that didn't work at all. But now the rings are clean, so I know that's probably not the issue. The next thing I'm going to try, I should probably have begun with, but I just had a feeling that it was the rings that was the problem. And I like to go with my stomach feeling on stuff like this. There is also the possibility of actually getting the special diagnostic computer for the Renault, and maybe I can even blink the code's eye out like I did on the XM. But yeah, it's always a big hassle to figure out how to do that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to go with the basics. And the next thing on that list is the connections between the wiring harness and the wheel sensors, because maybe one of those are just dirty. So this wire right here is for the sensor, and this connector up here is where I'm going to disconnect it. And then I'm going to measure and make sure that everything is clean. There we go. And then I'm just going to try to measure the ohm reading on that sensor. So 0.98 is the ohm reading. And according to my manual, it is supposed to be between 0.6 and 1.1 kilo ohm. So I guess that this sensor is all right. But I can also try to spin the tire and see if it measures any kind of voltage. Or spin the tire, spin the wheel. Yeah, it is measuring something at least. I cannot really see what it's measuring, but it's measuring something. So it's actually getting a signal at least. So I think this one is just fine. So I'm just going to reconnect this connector, making sure that it's completely nice and clean in there, but I do not see anything that looks bad. Everything looks very clean. This is the rear left tire, and it's the last one because I've checked all the other sensors. All the readings looks fine. The connectors looks clean. And I might mention that I could have done all of this from the multi-connector in the ECU and the engine bay. I just had to know which one to read on. But if I knew the correct pins on that, I could just measure all wheel sensors from the engine bay. To be honest, that would have been a little bit more clever to do and less time consuming than this. But on the other hand, I would have to use a lot of time to figure out which pin connector to actually test on. So I just did it this way because it was a bit easier to start doing without having to do a lot of research. But it might end up just being a bit of a time waste. Yeah, this is also nice ohm reading. And also nice. And also reading voltage. So that's good enough. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the sensors themselves. And I don't think it's damage on the rings or anything like that. So far so good. But before doing anything else, I'm just going to start it up to see if that light is still on. Because as mentioned, the light is on from the get-go. I don't even have to drive it to start to make the ABS light come on. So I can just start it up, and if the light is not on, then at least something has changed. Yep, it's still on.
Normal voltage. Waiting for connection. Bluetooth connection success.
Service light is on. So I'm going to take a look at that ECU in the engine bay now. So I'm just removing the ECU to check the connections. and see if it makes a difference to unplug and replug that one. And it might seem a little bit silly, but very often on these old cars, it's connections that are the issue. Bad corroded connections, bad earths, all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily always broken parts. And if I'm lucky, it's the same with this one. It's honestly looking just fine, but what I want to do now is to reconnect it, now that I know it's clean, and then try to start it up once again and see if the light comes on. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to take it for a spin and see if it comes on, and if it doesn't, then maybe we fixed it just by cleaning up connections. I was actually expecting to find a completely dead sensor, but they seem just fine, according to the readings at least. So my next concern would be a short in the wire going from this ECU to the actual sensors, and that is what I'm gonna test next. But before doing that, I'm just gonna try to reconnect everything and see if it's still the same. Let's see if that makes a difference. Now everything has been apart and reconnected. So let's see if the light is still on just by starting the car like before. Nothing. I think we're gonna have to take it for a spin to see if it comes on. So the light is no longer on, and to be honest, I'm not really sure why. Maybe the connector was not engaged right or something like that. Could also just be reset because the battery have been off for quite a while. But I did also try that earlier, and that did not make any difference. So who knows? But I'm gonna fit everything back together and take it for a spin and see if it comes back. And if it doesn't come back, then I will probably call it a bad connection at the ECU. And if it comes back, then it's something more sinister. Okay, so let's go for a drive and see if the light stays out. It's still off, but if something is wrong, it will probably pick up while I drive it. So I'm going to drive around for a bit and brake for a bit. But if it doesn't come back, then maybe I have just fixed it by taking the connectors on and off. And it's not uncommon to be something like that is needed. But it's always a little bit dissatisfying to not actually find the problem. And I wouldn't be completely surprised if it comes back in a week's time or something like that. But this is one of the things on the list on this car that I need to fix, because next year it's going to have a new MOT, and I cannot MOT a car with a service light on, especially not the ABS, but no service light can be on. Even though the brakes are working just fine, remember it's not something to do with the function of the brakes, it's only the function of the ABS system. And my cars normally don't have ABS system, so it's not a big deal for me, but of course it's there, it needs to work. Let's go for a spin. So far so good, nothing.
Coffre mal fermé.
Coffre mal fermé. What's that? Coffre mal fermé. Did I forget to shut a door?
Coffre mal fermé.
I have no idea what that means, but something is wrong. Coffre mal fermé. I wonder if Google Translate can help me here.
Coffre mal fermé. Coffre mal fermé.
I have to go back and see if I can figure that out in the manual, because I cannot really translate it.
Coffre mal fermé.
So I have no idea what that means. Coffre mal fermé. You know what? The rear hatch is not closed, right? So I guess coffre mal fermé is something to do with the rear hatch. Let's go and test to see if that light will stay off. The good thing about this is the engine is up to temperature now, because it took a long time for me to figure out what that error message was. And I should have just checked all the doors. I got an error code a while back for something to do with the radiator system. I just had to disconnect all the connectors and put them back together, and then the error code was gone, luckily. But I learned from that message that he seems to be quite angry when it's serious. It was not malfume, it was malfume. So I knew I had to do something about it. So for now, I'm just gonna react according to his to the aggression of the French voice. I think that is the best thing to do. But anyway, nothing is on. All is good. So that is nice. I think I fixed it just by unplugging and reconnecting. I'm just gonna do some brake testing just to see if the ABS system is actually working and to see if that makes it come back. So I'm just gonna brake quite hard on a wet road right now. I did have a slide lock up, but I don't know how effective that ABS system actually is. I think I'm gonna have to try another time. Yeah, it is reacting. It's just reacting quite slow, but maybe that's not uncommon on an old ABS system like this. I could feel the thing in the pedal, so I think it's all right. And the main thing, I have no light on still, so that's great. So this has got to be a success for now, at least. I will have to see while driving it a bit more if it comes back, but currently it seems just fine. And I think it's time to put this in storage until I get a spare ECU at least. I'm not going to try to fix that idle issue I'm having before I have a spare ECU. I just don't dare it. But I think it's time to just put this in storage until I get that, because yeah, I think salt is going to hit the road soon, and I don't want to. This car is just in too nice of a condition and too rare for me to just drive around in the salt. I can't make myself do that. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget you can support me on Patreon. That helps me out a lot at the moment. There is a link down below for that. And see you in the next one.